All rise. Please make sure I'll shut off and maybe seated.
Right, Mr. Wilson, you ready with Mr. Perry?
I am. If I didn't announce it already, people would call Clifford Barrington.
Just raise your right hand. Stand up. The matter not pending before this court, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat and state your name, swear the last name for the record.
My name is Clifford Barron, Clifford, Baron.
Mr. Hilson.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Barron, do you know the defendant Jeffrey Willis?
Yes.
How do you know Mr. Willis?
He was my material handler for like 5-6 years.
So you work for Herman Miller,
Yes.
and you work third shift with Mr. Willis.
Yes.
And is that true? Were you working together back in April of 2013?
Yes.
Now, I want to direct your attention to Sunday, the Sunday after Jessica Heeringa went missing, April 28th, 2013. Did you work that particular evening?
Yep.
And did the defendant work that night?
Yes.
Now, when you came in contact with the defendant, did you notice anything unusual?
Yeah, he had a bunch of scratches all over him.
Could you describe, just in general for the court, where those scratches were located?
He had a really big one on his right hand right here. He had 3 on this arm, and he had 1 on his face.
All right. Now, and I know you're not a medical doctor, but did any of them look particularly deep or?
Yeah, the one on his hand was really deep, and then he had like 1 deep one out of the 3 on his arm deep, and then the one on his face wasn't real deep, but it was way noticeable.
Okay. Handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 95. Do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes.
Is that something that investigators asked you to prepare?
Yeah.
And just so the record is clear, what is that document?
This is Jeffrey Willis's scratch marks that I seen the Sunday he come back to work.
Okay. And is that your signature up top there?
Yes.
And the date?
Yes.
Now, did you say anything to the defendant about those injuries?
Yeah, I did. I asked him how he got them. He said he got in a fight with his car while doing his brakes.
Now, sir, are you a person that is familiar with cars, working on cars?
Yes.
How so?
I work out on my cars always. So,
Have you been how long have you been working on your cars?
man, since I've been 8 years old, my dad.
Okay.
Oh,
Now, I don't want to age you, but what, 15, 20 years?
yeah, sure.
Okay. The injuries that you saw on Mr. Willis, did that look consistent with somebody who had been fighting
No.
with their brakes?
No, no way.
All right, there's an objection to speculation, Mr. Hilson.
Well,
That's-
give me 1 second, Mr. Barron. Certainly if the court wishes me to explore a little bit further, but he's indicated that he's worked on cars since he's been 8 years old, anywhere from 15 plus years. I guess I could ask the question if he's ever worked on brakes before, and if he's ever suffered injuries, and whether he's suffered similar injuries. I can ask that.
I think those questions would lay a foundation that might get you to the point of getting the objection
All right.
overruled.
Let me ask those couple of questions. Have you worked on brakes before?
Yes,
I mean, like
a
once?
lot.
A lot?
Yeah.
Ever obtained any those types of injuries working on brakes before?
No.
Now, as a person that works on cars, is that a clean or a dirty job?
A really dirty job, and his hands were clean.
So did it look like on that particular day he had gotten into the grease and the grime of working on brakes and had, dirt
No.
and grime in his fingernails? And
No, none whatsoever. No dirt. No grease.
the person that you made those observations on, is he in the courtroom?
Yes.
Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please?
Orange?
You want to let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant?
The record will reflect an identification.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
For the record, I believe the last series of questions would lay a sufficient foundation for this witness, even from a layperson's standpoint, to provide that opinion. I believe there's a rational basis after you perceive the witness. And therefore, under 701, I'm going to overrule the objection Mr. Hostek had previously posed to the question. Mr. Hostek, need cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Barron.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Willis discussed with you how to work on brakes on a car before, didn't he?
Sure.
In fact, you looked up with him information on doing brake jobs on the internet while you were at work once, correct?
I don't think it was a brake job, but we'd have discussed working on car vehicles before, yes.
And you pulled things up on the internet for him
Yep.
to show him how to do whatever it was he was asking, whether it was a brake job or something else?
Yeah, this was years later, though.
Okay, but you have had those discussions with him?
Yes.
All right.
And not only that, but he never, I would tell him what was wrong or whatever, and then he would have somebody else fix it for him.
Okay, he did it with his father-in-law, right?
Yeah,
If you know. But this is all coming from him later on?
yeah.
Okay.
So when he took,
Hang on a second.
oh,
Gotta wait for a question. You're saying it's, let's try that. You seem to be sure about the date, thinking back about things over 3 years later. That it was what date that you saw these injuries?
the day after the kidnapping,
Okay.
or whatever it was, the Sunday night.
How do you know?
How do I know what?
How do you know that it was the day after the alleged abduction?
Because we know when Jessica was taken. It was like on Friday or something, and he came back to work Sunday with the marks on him.
Okay. You work with a guy named Bubba?
Yeah.
Is that a yes, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't Bubba on vacation when this alleged abduction occurred? Do you remember that?
No.
Okay. You don't remember talking to Jeff about his injuries after Bubba came back from vacation?
No.
Or whether you talked to Bubba, or whether you talked to Jeff about his injuries while Bubba was on vacation?
No.
Okay. You never injured yourself doing brakes on a car, right?
No.
You're experienced.
Yeah.
You do it often.
Yeah.
Okay, how often?
Once a year. A couple times. Depends on who needs help with them.
Okay. What kind of tools do you use?
Ratchets, sockets, Allen wrench. That's about it.
Ratchets, sockets, and Allen wrenches?
Yeah.
Okay. You raise the car up too?
Oh yeah. Jack, tire iron.
Yeah. Take the tire off, right?
Yep.
Get inside the tire.
Yes.
No further questions.
Just one follow-up, Judge. So just so I understand, Mr. Barron, the conversations you had about fixing cars with the defendant was after 2013?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing else, Judge.
All right, Mr. Barron, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank
May
you.
this witness be excused, Mr. Hilson
Yes, Your Honor.
and Mr. Hostek.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barron, you are excused. Thank you.
People of the state of Michigan call Detective Sergeant Chris Purvett to the stand.
In a matter not pending before this court, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat and state your name and profession for the record, please.
My name is Chris Prevett. I work with the Michigan State Police. I'm employed as a detective sergeant.
Sergeant Prevett, what department, or what is your current assignment with the Michigan State Police?
I am currently assigned to the Computer Crimes Unit, and I supervise the 6th District Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
And how long have you had those assignments?
I've been assigned for over 4 years now.
And I'm assuming that prior to you taking on those roles, did you go through a training process?
Yes, sir, I have.
What was that?
Extensive training process of over 700 hours, training all over the country with specific forensic tools, also certifications. I'm a certified forensic computer examiner. That's through the International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists. That is over a year-long process, can be over a year-long process. That includes 4-month-long sections and then 2 45-day processes, and completing that certification is kind of the standard in this field.
And on top of that, obviously, is it safe to assume that your entire day is computer analysis or forensic analysis of computers and phones? I mean, is that kind of what your day comprises of?
Well, we do a lot of different activities. We do forensics. We do search warrants at scenes. Our unit comprises of a lot of different activities, actually.
Okay. And you found yourself testifying in court before?
I have.
As an expert in this?
I have.
How many times would you say?
Under 10, both in Muskegon and Kent County.
Your Honor, I move to qualify Sergeant Prevett as an expert in the area of forensic analysis and forensic analysis of computers and cell phones for this particular piece of testimony.
For purposes of the preliminary exam, Your Honor, I will not object.
Right, the court will recognize Detective Sergeant Prevett under Michigan Rule of Evidence 702 as an expert in forensic analysis of computers and cell phones. Without objection.
Could you briefly describe, Sergeant Prevett, the role of the Computer Crimes Unit in this overall investigation?
Yes, sir. From the beginning in 2013, we've been working with the task force on examinations of computers, any digital media that came into play. We did have our hands in a majority of those where we examined those through our office. More recently, in 2016, we assisted in search warrants at the scene, both seizing and securing those items and then bringing them back to our office and examining those.
And in particular, it's kind of tucked in the back here, but People's Exhibit 82, this Asus computer, is that one of the items that you examined as part of this investigation?
Yes, sir.
Number 82.
82, Judge. Now, what I'm interested in, Sergeant Prevett, is your discovery of what was labeled VIX folder, a folder labeled VIX. Do you recall obtaining that from that Asus computer?
Actually, it was from a Western Digital external hard drive.
Okay.
There was a...
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point on relevance grounds. You've admitted evidence of the alleged homicide as well as the alleged abduction of a minor with regard to charges that Mr. Willis is facing, but not about what was found on a computer, which is completely irrelevant to both of those crimes, alleged crimes, and certainly has nothing to do with the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa that happened over 3.5 years before. This is nothing but prejudicial and has very little probative value, if any.
Mr. Hilson.
Judge, I anticipate Sergeant Prevett to testify about a couple of things. One, that within that VIX folder, there was a folder labeled with Jessica Heeringa's initials. Also a folder labeled with Rebecca Bletch's initials. And the information contained within those folders certainly is relevant to whether or not the defendant kidnapped Jessica Heeringa, and certainly whether or not he killed her. Secondly, Judge, so that, to me, that makes that part of this testimony very relevant. Secondly, Judge, this court has to make a determination as to whether or not Jessica Heeringa is dead and whether or not she died as a result of a criminal agency. Putting, I guess, the cart a little bit before the horse, I anticipate informing this court as part of my motion to bind this case over to circuit court that the combination of two things, one, the folder labeled VICs, i.e. victims, that Jessica's folder being alongside Rebecca Bletch's folder, whom we know is deceased and dead, to me is a piece of relevant circumstantial evidence to suggest, at least for a probable cause hearing, that Jessica Heeringa is dead as a result of criminal agency. So for those reasons, Your Honor, this piece of testimony is relevant for this particular proceeding as it relates to the disappearance and death of Jessica Heeringa.
As to the computer analysis that Detective Sergeant Brevet is about to testify, based upon offer of proof by Mr. Hilson, the court rules that any testimony regarding a folder as it relates to a computer file or folder as it relates to Jessica Heeringa is intrinsic evidence, would not be subject to a Vanderbilt analysis. That's directly, in my mind, relevant to a case charged, and that case charged before this court where Jessica Heeringa is alleged to have been murdered and kidnapped. So that, in my mind, is intrinsic evidence, and it's not subject to the 404B analysis as we discussed in our hearing. Even if it were subject to that, and some future court were to consider that to be extrinsic evidence under the current case law, this court does find that it's relevant under 401 as to the disappearance of Ms. Heeringa and whether or not she is deceased and whether or not that death was as a result of criminal agency as required in People versus Modelski. That's Modelski at 164 Mishat 337. So I'm finding that it's relevant under 401 under a Vanderbilt analysis. I'm finding that it would be offered for a proper purpose to show that, at least by circumstantial evidence, that Jessica Heeringa is deceased. And that its probative value in this court's mind is very high. And so therefore, under a 403 balance, the prejudicial effect would also have to be very high to have this court rule that it would not be admissible. Because under 403, the probative value has to be substantially outweighed by its prejudicial effect. And I'm not finding that threshold has been met here by the defense objection. I'm finding it's relevant evidence, it's offered for a proper purpose, and that it will survive a 403 balance. So, one, Jessica Heeringa folder is intrinsic evidence. Even if it's not, it meets the Vanderbilt test. As to the Rebecca Bletch evidence, that in my mind is extrinsic evidence. And it also, in this court's mind, survives a Vanderbilt analysis. If, as Mr. Hilson has proffered, it is next to or near in the spatial situation to the Jessica Heeringa case, this court has been presented evidence that Rebecca Bletch was shot in the head with a Walter P.22 caliber handgun. That's in front of this court as an admitted exhibit. That it was found in the defendant's car. That, when I say that, I mean the handgun was found in the defendant's car. So therefore, the fact from a computer standpoint that a folder titled VIX are spatially connected on the same external hard drive, I believe, is that right, Detective Sergeant Brevet, is that what you said?
Yes, sir, there's an external.
Right. So those being on the same hard drive, in my mind, make that extrinsic piece of evidence relevant under 401 for the same proper purpose that was offered and proffered by Mr. Hilson just moments ago and that it also survives a 403 balance. I'm finding its probative value to be very high, and certainly this evidence is prejudicial, but it does not substantially, its prejudicial effect does not substantially outweigh its probative value. And incidentally, prejudicial effect doesn't mean that it just hurts the defendant in terms of a piece of evidence against him. It has to be prejudicial in the sense, as discussed in the cases that we put a pretty lengthy record together on the Monday preceding the beginning of this preliminary examination. So I recognize that distinction as well, and I'm ruling it's admissible. So your objection's noted, you may proceed.
All right. External hard drive found at the residence?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, when I say residence, the defendant's residence?
On Sheridan.
All right. And in that hard drive, you find a folder titled VIX, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, within that folder, are there subfolders?
There were 3 subfolders.
All right, could you describe for the court what 3 subfolders were contained within the VIX folder, please?
Yes, sir. There were 3 folders. One was titled with initials JLH, then there was a parentheses. It said then DZ13, close parentheses. Then there was another folder that was RSB, and then a parentheses, and it was FZ plus C, 14, and then close parentheses, and then another folder that was titled scans.
Okay. Now, were you able to decipher the letter number combinations for both JLH and RSB?
We were.
And as it relates to JLH, what did that, could you describe to the court how that code decoded?
Yes, sir. It took us a little while to figure it out because we were actually overthinking it a bit. It was actually more of a simplistic code that was A equaled 1, B equaled 2, C equaled 3, and so on. In the particular folder with JLH, that was a D and then a Z. So using the alphabet and 26 characters or 26 numbers in the alphabet, matching those up was 4 for the D, and then Z was 26. And then with the 13, immediately that made us realize that was the date of Jessica Lynn Heeringa's disappearance.
And just so we're clear on the record, JLH, were those the initials of Jessica Lynn Heeringa?
Yes, sir.
All right. For the second subfolder?
Same code was RSB, which we knew to be Rebecca Sue Bletch, and that was an F, in the parentheses again an F, so the 6, and then Z for 26. And there was a plus in the letter C, so that would be plus 3 more, so 29, and then 14 with a closed parentheses. So that would be June 29th of 2014, which we knew to be the day that Rebecca Sue Bletch was found to be murdered.
And then the third folder was scans. What was in that folder?
There were phone records located in that, a PDF forms.
Now, within the JLH folder, were there other items that you discovered?
There were.
What did you see?
We located images that we knew to be of Jessica Heeringa. We found pictures that were had naming conventions that had relative value to the investigation from news stories. There was also images that were child sexually abusive material, commonly referred to as child pornography, that actually looked somewhat like Jessica Heeringa. And those files were obviously noted and documented.
And in the Rebecca Bletch folder, what did you see? Or did you discover anything?
We did. There was a wanted poster for Rebecca Bletch. There was a news story link to it was at the time titled a runner that was hit on the side of the road, not those verbatim, but it was jogger found on the side of the road, injured. Then there was also an image that was found that appeared to be Rebecca Bletch, at least a similar looking individual that was in a undergarments or a bikini laying on a bed.
And I know, Sergeant, you analyzed several other pieces of electronic media. Is that safe to say?
Yes, sir.
In this particular investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions of the sergeant.
Cross, Mr. Hostage.
Good afternoon, Officer Clifford.
Afternoon.
Do you know when these three subfolders were created under the title VIX?
I could provide that to you if I looked at the dates. There's a lot of dates that are involved in this.
Where do you have the dates?
They should be in some, the end case reports that we generated.
Okay. In the mountain of materials I have, I don't think I'd be able to find that for you, but was it after, was the creation of the JLH subfolder, do you know if that was after the disappearance of Miss Belech?
I can tell you when it was placed, again, if I could review my notes, but I could tell you when it was placed on an external hard drive. I can't tell you when it was necessarily originally created, but I can tell you the date that it was placed on that hard drive.
Okay. Can you now?
I could,
What is it?
if I reviewed my notes.
That's okay. Were you aware that Mr. Willis had been questioned about the disappearance of Miss Heeringa back in May of 2013?
I was.
The subfolders for both under the titles both JLH and RSB contain pictures and news stories, correct?
That's correct, and a little bit different, obviously, in both those folders, but
Right.
generally speaking.
They pertain to each particular
Victim, yes.
alleged victim or victim in Miss Belech's case. Did you do any investigating as to whether or not any of those pictures were actually taken by Mr. Willis?
We did.
And?
They appeared to be, some of those appeared to be Facebook pictures, things that were taken from the internet.
And off of news stories and stuff like that?
Yes, sir.
Or some of them were people that resembled these two individuals?
That's correct.
That were in the folder, correct?
Correct.
In other words, there's no pictures of any dead bodies, right?
We found pictures of dead bodies on those drives.
I'm talking about the two subfolders, JLH and RSB.
Okay.
Did you find anything?
Not in those folders.
Okay. Those folders, all the images that contain in those folders were either newspaper clippings or pictures from the internet about those particular two individuals, correct?
Website links and pictures that were involving those particular victims.
Okay. And I'm going to ask that you stick around after your testimony is done, because I have a feeling I'm going to want you to come back. But I'm going to be, I think Mr. Hilson and I will have an issue about your mention of finding other pictures on the drive. So I'll wait to ask you about that. But it's fair to say nothing in those subfolders were pictures taken by Mr. Willis, or anything in there suggesting, well, just reaffirm that for me. True?
Are you talking about actually physically taking the picture or copying them and placing them on that drive?
I'm not copying them. You've already established they came from the internet. Were any of those pictures, to your knowledge, taken by Mr. Willis?
Not physically taken by him.
Okay. In fact, you know they weren't taken by Mr. Willis.
He obtained them.
He copied them from the internet. You've already established that.
Yes, sir.
You know he didn't take the live pictures, correct?
To my understanding, that's correct.
I have no further questions.
Just real quick, Sergeant Brevet, just so I understand, there were internet images, like from Facebook and newspaper articles, obviously from the internet. The provocative images that you talked about, the ones that had similar characteristics to both Jessica and Rebecca, were you able to determine if those came from the internet as well?
We were.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. My client was whispering.
All right. Yeah, my question was the provocative images that he testified to, whether or not they came from the internet as well.
Go ahead.
Yes, with reasonable certainty, they came from the internet.
All right. I have nothing else to say.
Right. Mr. Hilson, at the beginning of your direct examination, you referenced People's 82. What is People's 82?
82 is the ASUS tower. The two hard drives have been admitted into evidence. If you give me a second, Judge, I can give you those numbers if you want them.
No. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's 86. And this was the one found in the second search warrant, the one that was Velcroed. Velcroed in that compartment.
In the cold air return.
Thank you, yes, cold air return.
All right, so that is number what?
That's 86.
Okay, so that's 86.
And 83 is the external hard drive that was found in the dresser, if you recall
Okay.
that.
So my question to you, Detective Sergeant Brevet, is which one of those hard drives contained the VIX folder?
Actually, Your Honor, they both did.
Okay. When you say both,
Yes, sir. Both external hard drives, both Western Digital hard drives, both found in the drawer in the bedroom on the first search warrant, and then the one found in the air return on the second search warrant are both Western Digital hard drives, both with very similar file structure, and both contained the VIX folder.
all right, when you say very similar file structure, were they a duplicate?
Not exact duplicates. They were not identical, but they appeared to be backups of each other.
That was the question.
Yes, sir.
All
They're
right.
not exact duplicates, though.
But a back.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Hilson, any other questions based upon my line of question?
No, sir.
And Mr. Hosk, anything based upon my line of question?
I just want to make that clear, Your Honor, that the air duct drive, external hard drive, was a backup of something that was a drive that was already in his drawer. Correct.
I can't say which was which at this time. They were very similar. One was a backup of the other. They appeared to have very similar file structures.
Yeah, I can't do that. Okay, may Detective Sergeant Brevet be excused? No, you want him to
I
take
would like you
his
to
round.
stay pending the testimony of whoever's coming next, Judge, because I have a feeling I may be recalling him.
All right, so Sergeant Brevet, you can stand down, you're not excused.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your Honor, the people of the state of Michigan call Specialist Jerry McCarthy to the stand.
In matter not pending before this court, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat and state your name. Mr. Arresting for the record, please.
Gerald McCarthy, McCarthy.
And it's,
Gerald is Gerald.
Mr. McCarthy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you currently employed by the Michigan State Police?
Yes, sir, I am.
And in what unit are you serving?
I'm in the computer crime unit.
And how long have you been in the computer crime unit?
I've been with the Michigan State Police since 2010.
And have you always been in this unit since, I guess since 2010, has this been your sole assignment?
It has, yes, sir.
And to get into this unit, did you have any kind of specialized training or experience?
Yes, sir. I was a police officer for the city of Kentwood for 26 years, retired in 2009. I spent about 12 years as a detective in the Detective Bureau at the police department. I went through over 1,000 hours of computer forensic training, going back to the 1990s when computer crimes were just starting. Our chief indicated that he wanted someone trained, so I received training, and it continued from there, and it continues as of now.
Have you, well, as part of your job, I'm assuming you forensically analyzed hundreds of electronic devices, from flash drives to towers to hard drives, is that safe to say?
Yes, sir.
And that includes also some cell phone work as well?
Yes, sir, it does.
And have you ever testified in court before as an expert in this field?
I have testified both in local circuit, state courts, and federal courts as an expert.
How many times is that?
Dozens of times.
Okay. Your Honor, I move to qualify Jerry McCarthy as an expert in the area of, for this particular testimony, forensic analysis of electronic media.
Right, Mr. Haskell. Right, there being no objection, Specialist McCarthy will be deemed under MRE 702 an expert in the area of forensic analysis of electronic media.
Mr. McCarthy, we just finished off with Sergeant Prevett, and he had testified about analyzing 2 Western Digital hard drives. You recall having those in your unit?
Yes, sir, I do.
And in particular, we also, well, by my mistake, we had some testimony about this ASUS tower, Exhibit 82. The first question I have for you is, were you able to determine whether or not those Western Digital hard drives were ever connected to that ASUS tower?
Yes, sir, I was.
And how could you make that determination?
Through forensic examination and analysis, you can determine that what devices were plugged into the USB ports of a computer, and the 2 Western Digital 1 terabyte external hard drives had been plugged into that computer.
Okay. Now, does it fine-tune it down to dates and times and whatnot? Are you able to do that kind of deep forensic analysis?
It just shows the last time and date that it was plugged in, so it doesn't keep a log or history of each time.
Okay. The other tower, or let me ask you this question, did you take part in analyzing what's People's Exhibit 84, this gateway tower?
Yes, sir, I did.
And in particular, did you have a chance to look at internet history as it relates to that?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. In particular, did you search, or were you prompted to search for internet history related to either Walther, P232, Sig Sauer guns, I guess?
Yes, sir, I was.
And were you able to come up with anything in your search?
Yes, sir, I was.
All right. In particular, 2 dates come to mind for me. I want you to focus in on December 17th, 2012. Were you able to determine any type of internet history as it relates to Walther?
Yes, sir, I was.
What did you find?
There was a web history on December 17th, 2012 to the website Amazon.com, and there were searches within that Amazon.com website for a shoulder system for a Walther and a silencer for a Walther.
Now, does it indicate whether or not anything, or could you determine whether or not anything was ordered or anything of that nature?
I could not. This was recovered history that had been deleted and recovered.
All right. So, and maybe we should back up one step. Does the Computer Crimes Unit have the ability to recover deleted items?
Yes, sir.
And is it safe to say, I mean, do you recover full deletions, or how does that go?
It's a good question, and that all depends on the time and what activity has been on that computer. We can usually recover things that have occurred unless they have been written over. So it depends on each computer and each situation on how much activity was done before, from the time that that item was deleted and the time that it hits the forensic office.
All right. So does it surprise you that you have limited information on that internet search on, December 17, 2012?
No, it does not.
Now, I want to direct your attention to your findings from April 1st, 2013. Same gateway tower, what did you find?
Yes, sir. There was Google searches on April 1st of 2013 for Walther, and that's Walther, also for Sig Sauer. There was website, the Firefox web browser shows websites visited on 4/1 of 13 to the website of www.waltherarms.com, and then waltherarms.com/products/handguns.
And again, were you able to go any further to determine what products were being looked at on that website, or if anything was ordered or reviewed?
I was not, no, sir.
A similar situation as you, was this a deleted item as well?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Now, you also searched a Kingston hard drive, I think a 2 gig hard drive, is that correct?
There was a Kingston thumb drive or a flash drive that's a data traveler, which is a 2 gigabyte
My bad.
thumb drive.
As you can tell, I'm not a computer guy. This is marked Exhibit 85, just so that is that the particular thumb or flash drive that we're talking about here?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Now, as it relates to that, were you able to come across some personal, I guess I'll call it personal information related to the defendant, Jeffrey Willis?
Yes, sir, I did.
Handing you, sir, what's been marked as People's Exhibit 96 and 97. Let's start with 96. What is that document, please?
This was a document found on that Data Traveler Kingston thumb drive. It was labeled Willis, and it was a WordPerfect document similar to a Microsoft Word document. The document itself, when opened, and Willis was all in caps. It was Willis. The document, when opened, is a list of several account names and email addresses with the account numbers, passwords, PIN numbers, account information.
So, like a list of various bank cards and maybe websites and what the passwords were and whatnot as it relates to that?
That is correct.
Now, were you able to make a determination when that list was created?
The metadata inside that document showed that it was created in 2010.
All right.
2010.
Showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 97. What is that, sir?
This was a Word document also on that thumb drive. This was called passwords1.doc, and when this Microsoft Word document was opened, it contained a list of, again, bank account information, websites, different usernames and passwords.
Now, is there a similarity between 96 and 97 as it relates to the various banks and other entities that would require passwords and whatnot?
Yes, sir. There's a bank and a credit union and several email addresses that are consistent.
And were you able to make a determination of when that document was created, 97?
And item 97 was created on the thumb drive in 2015.
Now, I guess, Mr. McCarthy, what drew your interest to those two documents?
Well, the second one had several of the same banks and businesses and email addresses as the first one. However, the password had been changed.
Okay, to what was the changed password?
The password was changed to J4L27H13.
So the initials of Jessica Heeringa, and then date of,
4/27/13.
and in the 2015 document, how many passwords were changed to that?
7.
Now, you also did some analysis of the two hard drives, is that the Western Digital hard drives?
Yes, sir, I did.
And in particular, did you find anything, I guess, of a disturbing nature?
Yes, sir, I did.
What I'm interested in, Mr. McCarthy, is did you find any what I guess call abduction, rape?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is where Mr. Hilson is trying to introduce basically pornography found on Mr. Willis, allegedly found on Mr. Willis's computer. This, again, has no probative value into whether or not Ms. Heeringa disappeared. Someone's sexual proclivities has nothing to do with whether or not a jogger on a rural highway was shot in the back while jogging, or the alleged abduction that you've allowed in under 404B of a minor that who says a gun with an orange tip got pointed at her. This is completely prejudicial, and what kind of pornography Mr. Willis has or allegedly has on his computer has nothing to do with any of these cases, and it should be excluded.
Judge, I would agree on one aspect from Mr. Haska that by itself, if this is all we had, it probably isn't, well, I don't care what sick stuff he looks at. But again, when we look at, again, what the charges are in this case, abduction, murder, kidnapping, the fact that we are finding, and it's not, and again, I'll proffer testimony here, it's not that we're finding one or two of these, thousands of these videos. To me, again, when it comes to this court making a determination at this probable cause stage, whether or not, in fact, Jessica Heeringa was abducted and kidnapped, whether or not she was killed by criminal means, this piece of evidence, again, is relevant to whether or not the defendant has that kind of mindset in his head. Further, Judge, it also goes to, as the court evaluates, again, you know, the court has already indicated that the 404B evidence is coming. But the court's evaluation of that evidence doesn't stop at that hearing. The court has to evaluate that evidence in light of the totality of what's being presented to it in this particular preliminary examination. So, as the court knows, the defendant has just outright denied any involvement in any of these cases. The people have been presenting evidence over the last 2.5 days as to, for this purpose, the probable cause aspect that the defendant is involved in those. Therefore, again, this evidence helps, in my opinion, bolster that as the court views this evidence in its entirety. And that concludes the floor.
Mr. Hilson, Mr. Hostetler, can we have a sidebar?
Okay.
The record should reflect that we had a sidebar conference. I brought the attorneys to sidebar for this reason. Mr. Hostica had previously brought a motion in front of the court to have the courtroom closed, and we litigated that issue. But my thought process was I wanted to at least protect Mr. Willis's rights in terms of having inadmissible, prejudicial, overly prejudicial material brought out in public that wasn't going to be admitted at trial or in a public forum such as this preliminary examination. So I want the record to reflect that that was my intention. I did it for that reason. I asked Mr. Hilson to make an offer of proof. Mr. Hostica had a chance to respond, and I'm prepared to place that offer of proof on the record based upon what I heard in the sidebar conference. But the record should be clear. It was conducted with the court's conscientious purpose to protect Mr. Willis's right to a fair trial in this matter, and I have made that examination, and so go ahead, Mr. Hilson, with an offer of proof as to Mr. Hostica's objection to the forthcoming evidence.
All right, Judge. I anticipate Mr. McCarthy testifying that he reviewed thousands of images on both those hard drives. In particular, he found several, I'm going to classify it as thousands, of these abduction, rape, kill videos. Further, I anticipate him testifying that in his review of those videos, he observed in some of them similarities of items that were found in the search of the defendant's van by the state police, which we've already had testimony about in images introduced as evidence. That's my understanding of what Mr. McCarthy is going to testify to.
Mr. Hostel?
Your Honor, first of all, I am not privy to thousands here in court. And second of all, there's nothing probative about this. The fact that Mr. Willis is allegedly into this kind of thing. I have lots of friends that are into Friday the 13th and Saw movies. They're not killers, and they don't abduct people. This doesn't show anything. All it does is exactly what 404B tries to prevent in influencing someone's opinion against a person based on what fascinates them or what kind of movies, essentially, they like. And these aren't anything, none of this stuff has been produced or made by Mr. Willis. We're not going to hear about any videos of involving any of the alleged victims in any of these cases. We're going to hear, I think, about videos found on his drive that are, abduction or such videos that Mr. Hilson described, but it doesn't have any probative value. All it is prejudicial. So I'd ask the court to reconsider your ruling, if you have ruled, I think you have, to not allow this type of evidence. I mean, we've already heard about other things on his drive that don't make it any more or less likely that he's guilty of any of these crimes. But this I think is crossing the line. So I ask you to rule that this is prejudicial. And I haven't seen thousands of videos, so it's going to be difficult for me to cross-examine this witness.
All right. Give me a moment here. Right, the record should reflect that in the people's brief regarding the 404B type evidence, the people on page 15 and 16 outline what I believe Mr. Hilson has made by way of offer of proof here today. So Mr. Hostica was certainly on notice that this was going to be proffered evidence. And again, Mr. Hostica, I would agree with your analysis that in and of itself, if this was the only piece of evidence, this would really not be very meaningful at all. And I too have friends that have watched, films of a type that I don't like to watch. I don't watch the murder films because I don't care for that. But they, have some entertainment value to some people. But that's not what we're talking about here. That's taking that offer of proof and taking it entirely out of the context of this case. Within the context of this case, the offer of proof that Mr. Willis had abduction, rape, and kill videos is relevant to this court. It does have probative value. Incidentally, one of the charged offenses is kidnapping, and for the sake of redundancy, the allegation is that Mr. Willis, on or about April 26 of 2013, did knowingly restrain Jessica Lynn Heeringa with intent to engage in criminal sexual penetration or criminal sexual contact with that person. So along with the general denial to those allegations, comes the burden of proving each element for this stage in the criminal proceeding by a probable cause standard. And I'm finding that in the context of this case, that the fact that he had abduction, rape, and kill videos on his computer is relevant. It is not the end-all be-all. It has probative value. And I'm finding that it meets the 401 relevancy standard. It meets the 403 balancing test, and it's offered for a proper purpose, in this case to prove one of the elements of the crime of kidnapping. Mr. Hilson, you may proceed.
Thank you. In your analysis of both of these hard drives, in particular, we're talking about the abduction, rape, and kill videos. How many of those did you find?
There are several thousand videos on those devices. On the Western Digital external hard drives are 1 terabyte in size. There was several hundred videos of that was kind of a 4-part consistent theme to them, and they were both on both Western Digital hard drives. Those videos consisted of kidnapping, abducting women by force, usually with the use of a weapon, sometimes a handgun or sometimes a knife. These occurred in several different settings that included businesses where these women worked, homes during a home invasion type scenario, out for a walk or a jog on the street when the abductions and kidnappings took place. In several of these, the suspect is wearing rubber gloves, wearing a mask. The second part is these women, after they're abducted and kidnapped by force, they're restrained. The restraining of these women occurred with several different means, which included ropes, chains, handcuffs. Duct tape was used to restrain them. Several of these videos, a black head strap with a red ball gag was placed into the woman's mouth so they could not scream, yell, or whatever. It prevented that. So they were restrained. They were also all violently sexually assaulted, raped, and tortured in these videos. And the end result of these videos was death. In these videos, the death was accomplished by several different means, which included gunshots, drownings, suffocations, where a plastic bag was placed over the woman's head and duct taped around the neck, hanging, strangulation, beating, choking, just about every possible way of committing a horrific death, violent death, these videos depicted. I think I can sum up the videos as the most horrifying, gruesome, and brutal videos I've ever had to watch in my career.
Now, you referenced a couple of things, but you were familiar with some of the things that were taken from the defendant's van as a result of that search warrant, the toolbox and the restraints and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
And I know you referenced a few of those. I'm assuming you did that because you noticed the similarities between what was taken from his van and what you were seeing on these videos.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Now, and did you, in your search of these Western Digital hard drives, were you able to find any what I would call homemade videos, or videos that were not at least professionally made or may have been made by the defendant himself?
Yes, sir, I did locate some.
Now, we've introduced into evidence.
Maybe we approach it on the other side.
Yes. record should reflect that we conducted a sidebar at Mr. Hostika's request, and after having heard the proffered testimony, the court would conclude that, at least for preliminary examination purposes, that evidence would, in the court's mind, be cumulative of evidence that was just articulated by Investigator McCarthy. And so I'm not in any way indicating that that would not or should not be admissible at trial. That's not an issue before the court. I'm talking about cumulative for the purposes of moving forward on a probable cause preliminary examination. Mr. Hostika, does that fairly summarize our conversation regarding the proper evidence?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hilson?
It does, Your Honor, and I appreciate the court, and I certainly don't want to overindulge, so thank you for that.
We also discussed scheduling.
Yes, sir.
And how we were going to proceed with the remaining balance of today. Mr. Hilson, you're indicating this is your last witness?
This is my last witness.
All right, and all right, so while we're on the spot of summarizing our sidebar, we talked about what our plan was for the remainder of the day. Mr. Hasika, I'll let you finish with this witness as long as you need. There's no rush. I'm not in any way intimating that I want to rush you through this, so I'll give you as much time as you need. But my plan would be then, after Mr. Hilson concludes his presentation of proofs, to give you an opportunity to present proofs, and you indicated you did have some, but it might be lengthy. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor, I would prefer not to break it up into 2 different days, but I'll do whatever the court
Well,
desires.
what my plan is then is to finish with Investigator McCarthy and then break for the day and give you tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon is my normal preliminary examination day. We roll the whole week through. And so I believe, Mr. McGowan, that tomorrow's schedule,
Judge, we could do tomorrow afternoon at 1:30.
we have some prelims set
We
at
have,
1:30.
we have actually, we have 1 and then 9 people. 1:30
At 2?
Right.
2? Okay, so I have 1:30 preliminary examinations on unrelated matters, and I think we can start at 2. All right, anything else, Mr. Hilson, on our sidebar?
No, Judge.
All right.
No.
So, Mr. Hilson, anything else, Mr. Hostek, on the sidebar?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so, Mr. Hilson, you may proceed then with Specialist McCarthy.
I have no additional questions for him. The only thing that I would move for is the admission of 96 and 97, which are the 2 password documents that he testified to earlier.
All right, those are physical exhibits.
Yes. 2 paper exhibits, People's 96 and